Hello, it is now 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, February 28th, 2023, and it is now the 24th episode of this season of Effluvium. Unfortunately, one of our guest panelists, Jane Daly, is unable to make it this evening, and we do hope that we can reschedule her at a later date. However, we do still have the other guest panelist, Marcial, and Marcial blends fragrance and Marcial blends hair. And Ryan will be joining us this evening as well. And we may have a fourth guest panelist to fill in. We'll see if we can have a fill-in for a fourth panelist. If not, we've done it before. We've had three panelists for Effluvium, so no big deal if we only have three. So we'll get things started by doing three first impressions as usual. And we'll bring in Ryan and Marcial shortly thereafter. And we're just taking a look at the chat right now to see who has jumped in. And Philippe, hello. Scent of the day, Vetiver Tonka by Hermes. And testing both concentrations of Tam Dao tonight. And hello, Michi. Great to have you here. Vol de nuit eau de toilette. And is that? Yes, it is. How appropriate. I do see that jet. Scent of the day, Fahrenheit. Paroli, good to have you here. Tony Vaccarella, good evening. And hello, Carl A. And hello, Micah C. Shoemaker. Heinrich. Dusan Nisik. Yes, this is wonderful stuff. This is actually Richard Harvey from the album, I believe it is Nifty Digits, which was released on KPM, which is a sound library record label. I believe that the album was released in 1979. There are a couple of tracks on that album that will be very familiar to those who grew up watching Sesame Street as a kid. If you remember the Crayon Factory segment that they showed with the very cool proggy kind of music in the background, it was actually on that same album. Maybe perhaps sometime I will play that in the background, maybe even tonight. We'll see, because I do have a little bit of a library here of music. And I don't know if Rachel will be able to fill in. She is actually a little under the weather herself, but I have sent my feelers out to see who would be able to possibly join us as a fourth panelist. Very nice. Dower, Sundowner, Scent of the Day, Antaeus. And good to see you, Danny. Scent of the Day, 8, and Bob Egypt. Great. All right, we'll get started with the three first impressions. Okay, and I will first introduce them. All right, so the three that I'm going to be testing to get things started this evening, one is a new release, Mona Diorio, Domaine, Domaine. The nose is Frederick Dahlman, and this is a Lily of the Valley Soliflor. And just referring to the ad copy, Domaine was named after Domaine Saint-Blanche, and it is an homage to the Lily of the Valley famed by Mona Diorio's tutor, Edmund Rudnitska. And many of you know that as Diorissimo. And the ad copy continues, Domaine is a fragrance where the past meets the present. It is an ode to what has been, but also a celebration of what the future will bring. It's our love affair with accords and parfums, our history as a brand, the art of perfumery, and the beauty of life itself, a story told by one of nature's true miracles, the scent of Lily of the Valley. I grew up with Lily of the Valley growing in my backyard, so I have been familiar with its fragrance for much of my life, and I just have such fond memories of it, and it's really associated with great memories of my mother, who would actually taught me about the various flowers that grew in our yard and the neighborhood. She had such a love for flowers. So I'm going to get started with that pretty soon. I'm going to keep this in the same sequence as I normally do, introduce them and then sample them. The next one is Joram Studio, Paradisi. This is one that was released just last year from the perfumer Hugh McCall. And Joram Studio is an Edinburgh, Scotland-based house. They have over 20 fragrances in the house. And I'd love to have like a full sample set. I already have and really enjoy Arborist. Cardus was another one that I sampled, but I want to explore Ewan's creations in further depth. So this has some really intriguing notes to it. Cucumber, rhubarb, guava, honeysuckle, pear, passion flower. It's very tropical, green garden-like from what I've read. There's even a note of mushroom and humus, which is sort of like soil. So I'm looking forward to trying that one out. The third one that we have here is from the House of Rance and Company, which is L'Aigle de la Victoire, Eau de Parfum, Collection Impériale. And I sort of recoil just from smelling this from the atomizer of this little sample spray. So I don't think I want to put this one on my skin because I don't want to regret it. And I really don't want to have to step away if I don't need to scrub something off. But I already have a feeling this will be very challenging for me just from the fact that it is emanating. Not having sprayed it at all. This was actually sealed in one of those candy wrapper like seals, and it is emanating, and it is powerful. So we'll get started with the Mona Diorio Domaine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Domaine. Philippe. Help me out with that one. Oh. So when I first smell this, there is Lily of the Valley there. I am so familiar with the fragrance of the flower from having grown up with it and having it grow in abundance here in the springtime in New England. So I know exactly what I'm looking for when they're supposed to be Lily of Valley, Muguet, or is it Muguet? Muguet? Domaine. Thank you, Philippe. There's a certain sweetness here, and maybe the sweetness is the attempt to be modern. It's like a coumarin vanillan sweetness that I wouldn't necessarily expect from what is a very green, white, fresh floral. When I expect a soliflor of a Muguet, of Lily of the Valley, there isn't really any sweetness. It's like a crispness, a wateriness, a sort of amalgamation of different green and white florals, like a little rosiness and a little jasmine-ness. And it's really a unique scent of the Lily of the Valley. It's difficult to reproduce, and many of you may already know you can't extract it from nature. It is such a delicate and watery flower, and it doesn't produce an essential oil that creates that scent. But this is I'm a bit underwhelmed. Like I don't pick up enough of the green facets. It's like Lily of the Valley isn't a type of flower that I would expect to be in, it wouldn't be a flavor. It is very, if you were to taste it, if you could taste it, you certainly shouldn't, because the flowers in the plant are highly toxic. The berries could make you very ill. But if you could taste it, it would be very bitter. So it's not like certain florals that have a pleasant flavor, like rose or violet or osmanthus or you name it, jasmine. So the dissonance that I feel is that this is an attempt to make it a little bit more sweet and gourmand, but it gets sort of lost in translation. It gets dampened and buried by this sweet element. And I'm telling you, it's far too sweet. And there's an ambroxan there too that I don't really understand its role in this. I'm not really thrilled with it. It's kind of disappointing, especially coming from a house like Mona Diorio. We'll set that one aside. The next one here is Joram Studio Paradisi. And I'll put this on my left hand. Now this, I immediately pick up a greenness. It is wafting right from the hand. And what a greenness it is. Wow. I feel like I'm in a hothouse. It's like a hothouse with plants with huge leaves, like monstera leaves and palm leaves and banana leaves. Yeah, this is super green. And I'm a sucker for green notes and fragrance. I love my greenies, as I call them. And there is nothing really, I mean, there are tropical fruits in this, but it's more of a tart and tangy kind of tropical fruitiness, not very sweet at all. Interestingly enough, all the greenness, any of the greenness that I was expecting in Domaine, it's all in here and then some. Like, there's actually this is an amplified green, but the tinge of green, maybe the galbanum green or the leafy green that I would have loved to experience in the Domaine. This is more than making up for it. Sorry, I left that comment here. All right, I'm going to do a little catch up here as I'm doing the 3 impressions. And good evening, GMG. And Dusan asked me, what's my opinion on the Cologne version of Pot d'Espagne by Santa Maria Novella? I only knew of the Cologne version. I think that from what I thought, Santa Maria Novella, all of the fragrances are advertised as a Cologne concentration, even though many of them perform far more than what is expected of a Cologne concentration. État libre d'orange, éloge du traître. Éloge du traître. That one I know, from what my knowledge, I haven't smelled it. It has some similarities to fragrances like Yatagan and Aramis Devon. I never experienced it myself. Good to see you, Coldano. And good evening, Oski. Not in the know. I tend to be shy in the last consonants. Say the N, don't be shy. Well, it's funny because I hear some people who speak French say there's no N. And then I hear some people say that there is an N, but it's a different N. And I know from my distant experience taking French in high school that it's just a very different, it's nasal, but it's not a hard N. And I think that maybe sometimes I overcompensate that. Muguet. Muguet. Great, thank you. Absolutely not. I could not. Endoma, I could not. Absolutely not. It's very muted. It's too muted. I just have a feeling with these newer releases, even from these larger niche houses, like I've been hearing mixed things about so many newer releases lately. It's kind of a bummer. Yeah, this does not remind me at all of Dorissimo. There's just something generic floral about it now. Like like Hedione is going. Like I don't get it. Yeah, obviously I'm a little perplexed. Yeah, I didn't hear this rumor about Pot d'Espagne being discontinued. They did discontinue one of my favorites from Santa Maria Novella, Garafano, a while ago. I think a lot of these very carnation soliflors have been discontinued really because it's very difficult to build carnation accords now with some of the restrictions on eugenol and eugenol derivatives. And yeah, I know of the Oris Legrand Pot d'Espagne, their version. I haven't sampled that one yet. Hey there, Dan, Mr. Smelly. Good to have you here, as always. Your entire face lit up smelling that, and it must be the Paradisi. Yeah, I'll get back to that one, and then we'll do the third one. Yeah. You know what this kind of reminds me of? And I don't know if you and McCall would appreciate this because it's a very polarizing green fragrance, and it's often described as synthetic. And we actually talked about it last week when we had Chris from Scentland, the Land of Scent. It kind of reminds me of aspects of Cacharel Eden. Like, if like plastic jungle plants had a scent that mimicked real plants, that would be the smell. But I kind of like that. It's not a dig. It's kind of like a cool concept. And but there is some naturalness to it too. I to his credit, there is some naturalism, and it kind of reminds me of like green bananas, like banana peel, like bananas that haven't been ripened. Mango, green mango, not fully ripened mango. Yeah, I'm digging it. Okay, so as I said, the third one, I'm not spraying on my skin because I recoil when I just smell it like from the bottle. And I'll give you a little bit of information actually on this one. At this point, like I have surrendered to the notes pyramid because it's just everybody else uses it as a guide. I'm tired of challenging myself, and it helps. So I have it here. I'm not going to really like obsess over it. I'm not going to look for the Calabrian bergamot in this because I doubt I'm going to find it in this one. But this is released in 2013, and the ad copy is pretty humorous. The manly, penetrating notes of agarwood and leather captivate your mind, releasing a hypnotic sensuousness. The most daring among Rancé 1795 fragrances has come back with a new bewitching soul. In 2015, the fragrance was reformulated, apparently. So I don't know what version this is. If it's been reformulated, then I can't imagine what the original was. If you can smell it without spraying it out of that little tiny orifice. Not spraying this on my skin. I'm spraying this over here, away from my my face. You know what this reminds me? This reminds me of like smelling like pure castoreum. Now I know I don't even know if that's in the notes pyramid, but this is totally like if you were to smell like pure castoreum that hasn't been diluted, it hasn't been, brought to a 1% for, reasonable usage. It smells like I've opened up a vial of castoreum goo. And there's a bit of a urinous undercurrent, which makes sense. As far as it being oud, we all know the story about that. Like, is it oud or is it Memorex? I'm fairly certain there's, a negligible amount of real agarwood in this. Maybe they use some agarwood CO2, which sometimes happens if a fragrance house has a releases, like, think Frederick Malle in that series of 3 outrageous $1,000 fragrances. There's some real oud in a couple of those. I don't know. It really reminds me of a less pissy leather oud from Dior. But it's very and I'm looking at the notes breakdown, and it doesn't list castoreum, but to me, this is all castoreum. There's a raspberry note, apparently. And the rumor online that castoreum is used as a flavor for vanilla and raspberry and etc. That's all bullshit. That's not true. However, there are facets of patchouli. I think I'd rather smell patchouli at the moment. There are facets of castoreum that do feel a little like raspberry jam-like. Obviously, like, I'm not put off by it. Like, I'm fascinated enough to keep smelling it, but not enough to say this fills my heart with glee and the enthusiasm to apply this to my skin. It just wouldn't be an enjoyable wear. I'm glad that I sprayed it on paper. It's not really my jam. It's not really my raspberry castoreum jam. So far out of the 3, I would actually say the Rancé 1795 edges out the Domaine, which is a snooze fest at this point, and Paradisi is the most interesting one out of the 3. So there you have it. The 3 impressions for this evening, and we'll revisit those a little bit later on and make a final decision. See what the dry down is in about, I don't know, an hour and a half or so. We'll set those aside. All right, so we have our other panelists in the back. I'd like to explore the Aritza house. Prices are okay. No idea about the actual quality. I have 6, and I love Chypre Mousse, Violette Dusar, my favorite violet fragrance. The Heliotrope is a heliotrope fragrance that's very nice that I have. And what are some of the others? Rêve d'Océan is a wonderful incense. And Paroli says, I will ask for a sample of Pot d'Espagne with my next Aritza order. They're very generous with samples, usually. And I'm glad I could help you out with some of those samples, too. I think I sent you a couple of the Aritza along with the Santa Maria Novella. Me too. And you know what I was thinking when I was smelling the Domaine? This is no Muguet Porcelain. Not at all. Muguet Porcelain seems more like a tribute to Edmund Rudnitska, which would be probably a little bit more expected with competence from Jean-Claude, Ellena. That one I love. There are not too many Muguet fragrances in my repertoire, but I do have Diarissimo and I have Muguet Porcelain, and it's hard for me to be impressed by too many Lily of the Valley fragrances. So in a way, I'm not terribly surprised that Domaine fell short of my expectations. Pet, lovely to see you. Glad that you could tune in. I must ask how heavy your loafers are, everyone. Well, contrary to certain opinions, my loafers are not as light as people think. I'm really kind of like a hard scrabble kind of guy. I just try to keep it genteel for the audience. Hello. Good to see you, Antonio. No, sir. Are you serious? I'm just gonna have to bring you in then. And why am I not seeing the preview of you guys? This does not bode well. If I don't see pictures of you, that doesn't bode well. Oh God. And can I hear you? I just added you. Are you saying it?
I'm here. I'm with you.
I don't know why this happens sometimes. It happened again. It hadn't happened in like months. But for some reason, I can't see. Couldn't see you in preview, and I can't see you now. So I have to see the expressions on your face, on your face when I say ridiculous things. I mean, I have to. So I have to open up YouTube so I can see you and see Marcial when I bring them in. So just bear with me.
1 second.
Early Greek just posted a great photo. It includes Ellena d'Orsay, poor Monsieur from Chanel. We have to have him back. He has a very busy schedule, but we need to have Thomas back. Okay, I am going to open up the YouTube so I can see you fellas. All right. Open the app, turn this down so we don't have an echo. There you are. I see you. You're leaning with your finger there. Okay, great. I can't believe this is happening again, folks. I'm sorry. It's just one technical issue after another. I'm going to set right there. And what can you do? Look. Okay. All right. And I am going to bring in Marcial for his Effluvium debut. Hello.
Hey, is this thing on? Is this thing on?
It sure is.
To Effluvium. How are you guys doing?
I'm well.
You would better after that intro. My energy's up now. No, that's great.
It's a good contrast to my sort of like underwhelmed deadpan of the three first impressions.
Now you have an official theme song that you can.
Oh no! That's actually a remix. Marcial has his own theme song, and he adapts it for when he's on Effluvium. He has his own theme song. Marcial, could you please do the honor of singing the song for us?
Me. Welcome to. Oh no! So it's also welcome to living. So it's everything, right?
Oh, yes, goodness. You have that version too. The Fragrance Show version was the first one that I heard.
First one. Okay. Welcome to my Fragrance Show. We'll learn together and grow together. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You owe him royalties, JJ.
This is the kind of energy that I wanted Marcial to bring tonight, so I'm glad.
I'm here for it. I'm living.
Thank you. We are all living. We're all living. We're getting our lives. I have the AC on, but I'm still hot. I don't know what the heck. The heater's on like crazy.
Yes, Philippe and Pierre Desine is very nice. It's like a Shalimar with a lot of Apopanax, which is why I love it. That's another one from Oritza La Grande. That one I haven't tried, Cole. Gentry Jockey Club. Violet leather. Sign me up. Basic Morlaco. Lovely to see you. I should have actually had you in mind for a fourth panelist. If you two fellas don't mind, I'm going to see if anybody answered to see if they'd like to join as a fourth panelist. Because sadly, Jane couldn't join us tonight. I really hope that I can reschedule her because she's a blast. Let me see if I got any other answers here.
What JJ means by that is we're not enough. We're not enough.
No, not even Marcial with his bursting energy. It's just not. We just need that little je ne sais quoi.
I don't cut it.
No, I'm just kidding. No. It's fine if it's only the three of us. But I like to give the opportunity for a fourth if it prevents.
Absolutely, the wisdom of Morlaco.
Maybe we can see if because he was great the last time that we had him. Let's see. I'm gonna private message him. Private message him. You know, it's private. You know, like
I'm your private messenger.
no,
For the panel.
nobody knows that I'm sending him a message inviting him. Just between me and him.
That's it. That's TV speak, you know, just between us.
Just between us. So I just sent him a message if he would like to join, and if not, that's fine too. But I think it would be wonderful to have him join us.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Pep. I am working. I'm trying to take advantage of wearing sweaters for as long as I can, while we still have winter, because apparently winter came a little late here in New England, and we have snow and cold temperatures entering March. So yeah, this is a Pendleton. I happen to be a fan of the Pendleton brand, but my budget isn't. But you know, I have a few of their sweaters. Glorious Vanilla and Shalimar. Somebody asked me if I was going to be featuring Shalimar this week on my Instagram, because I'm doing classic ambers, and I'm not, and it's only because I've already written a review on Shalimar, and you bet your sweet Bibby, if I hadn't, it would be the first one for this week. But yeah,
just catching up. Soufflé de Shalimar. That's my favorite one.
Oh, that's the most recent flanker, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
I haven't tried it.
Excited about the new Francesca Bianchi release. Tell us about it. Jump on and tell us about. Well, you can't jump on because I don't give the what do you call it, the link publicly. But I did send you a message on Instagram, and if you can jump on, I will send you the link. Oh, bummer. Okay, I will consider you for another time. I just got your message from Instagram. All right, no worries at all. All right, just catching up, because I don't like to be too far behind. Did I see that Henna is here? Wonderful. Henna, if you want to join us this evening, just send me a message on Instagram. Maybe if you're willing, I can have you jump on as a fourth panelist. The sample pack cost. Yeah. That's well, it saved you a lot of money because they can be very expensive, you know, getting the samples for Santa Maria Novella. Okay, I think we're pretty much caught up. I'm still working on keeping caught up with that. All right, fellas, I'm going to take a look here and see how you guys are doing. It looks like you're smiling and content. Okay.
That's right. You have to look over to the side.
I have to look over here. So Marcial, on occasion, and this is something that isn't really expected, and it's until unfortunately I'm already live and I can't do anything about it. Okay. It happened like once or twice before. So like my browser will screw up, and then I won't be able to see the people who are backstage or live. So in order to actually interact with them and see their faces, I have to open it up on my phone. So I'm looking over here, my phone, to actually see you guys. It's not showing up on my laptop.
We're making it work.
Yes. All right. So we had a couple of topics for discussion. We were going to go over, this was my suggestion because I thought it would be an interesting topic to go over. You know, there's the whole greenwashing movement in beauty and in fragrance. You know, we're talking about brands that claim to be cruelty-free and gluten-free, as if you're going to be, you know, imbibing it. No phthalates, no parabens, this and that. No toxins, no chemicals, which is absurd because everything is a chemical. So I wanted to kind of go over a discussion on that and see what your guys' thoughts are on, you know, this greenwashing movement and how it applies to fragrance. And then also, Marcial, you had a great idea for bringing into relief those members of the fragrance community who are not necessarily as visible. They're not like interacting on live streams. They don't have Instagrams. They don't go really on social media, maybe at most, maybe on a forum on Base Notes. And to realize that we're really just like a very small a very, you know, thin cross section of the community. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But let's get started with the greenwashing first. Ryan, what do you think are the most silly things about clean beauty and how it's applied to fragrance? I mean, you have houses like Henry Rose, for example, and I don't know what else. Tell me what you think of this whole topic in general.
It's never something I've taken that seriously because I don't know. The land of luxury is the land of like flim flam marketing across the board, right? So this is kind of par for the course with how luxury brands have always marketed themselves. It's just whatever's trendy at the moment, they're gonna try to pitch their product in the way that like is the most buzzwordy ad copy version of that there can possibly be. So as we've seen culture, probably for the better, pivot towards more alternatives, more, green tinged, like certainly with food, it's been great. The options you get at the food store these days are light years beyond what you ever had before. And like now we're seeing a host of options for consumers across luxury goods, fragrance spectrum. I think that's all great. I think the problem is you can't really tell the good ones from the flim flam peddlers, so to speak, because a lot of the buzzwords are effectively meaningless. And this is true with, if you do your research about organic foods and what it takes to qualify as organic and how, how meaningful that label is or isn't. There's a lot of gray area in that. You really have to do your research and more than anything, really vet the source for that wording to mean anything. And more or less what I think is the great tragedy of this is just that because it's become so ubiquitous, it's effectively become meaningless. It's more just noise that you tune out. It doesn't really help you make a decision about a given fragrance. Most fragrances, like cruelty-free at this point, describes so many fragrances out there. And I agree we shouldn't have, fragrances that have been tested on animals when you can't. Like that's laudable.
Right.
But as a category, it doesn't really distinguish between a lot of like, it doesn't really help narrow the field a lot because so much can be so easily called like cruelty free or it's I don't know, like it's a hard topic for me to talk about because I just don't have a stance about it. My stance is essentially that it's just become like noise. And I appreciate the brands that are generally like independent, that come to the table with a very strong and clearly articulated stance on how they are trying to be a sustainable fragrance brand that is behaving ethically. Like Filigree Shadow, which is very upfront about what's in its fragrances, how its fragrances are made, very careful about how its fragrances are packaged. That is very laudable and praiseworthy to me.
Right.
I'm less interested in a brand that maybe I could find at a higher end department store counter telling me that they're doing all this stuff for green practices. Because they're I mean the shipping and manufacturing processes alone, I guarantee you are not on the scale of like benefiting the planet, yay, nay.
Not
coming out in like the thumbs up.
Right. It totally seems disingenuous for for any kind of commercial pursuit to say that they're 100% sustainable. Like it's just, there's no way that there can be 100% sustainability. If it needs to get from a point A to point B through some sort of means, that's arguable as whether that's sustainable or it takes a certain amount of petrol, a certain amount of gasoline, transport, all of the resources that must be wasted in order for the final product to be made. So the whole sustainability thing, I feel like it's loaded when that is sort of like the biggest selling point, in an ideal world. And it would be great to have sustainability in commercial products, but commercial products are inherently unsustainable. Like, it's just I just don't buy it. I buy it, but I don't buy that. I buy the commercial, I buy the products, but I
But
don't
I'm not
buy
buying the stick.
the shtick often. And most of my brands that I love, in the perfume world, don't really go on too much about how sustainable they are. I mean, it's more like a footnote, and it's like I almost kind of appreciate it more when it's more of a footnote for those who are looking for it than to have that be the sort of raison d'etre of the brand. Like, we're all about, clean water and clean energy, and not harming animals and cruelty free. Speaking of cruelty, oh my God, that Rancé, they were cruel to a beaver. It smells so rank. Oh my God, this is filling up my entire room, and it's pretty barbaric.
They harvested it while it was alive.
They harvested while it was alive. It's like they applied like the methods for a civet to a beaver, and they realized that didn't work, and they killed the beaver, and now this is on it. This is in it. It's like, no. I kind of am fascinated with the smell of castoreum, on a like pure, undiluted, but it just doesn't translate into a fragrance that would be, there's a crudeness to it. I'm just sorry, because it's just like it's permeating me, and I may have to throw this in the dumpster outside.
The dumpster will be offended, just to let you know.
The dumpster will be offended. It's.
I think you're. I'm glad I'm not there to smell it, but I would say I think that raises actually an interesting dichotomy, though, because we're focusing on the sustainability side of greenwashing. There's a lot of things on that spectrum. The sustainability is very interesting because there's actually an interesting tension between this sort of what I associate as a greenish sensibility of being like, oh, I like all natural perfumery. I like all natural stuff, and sustainability, which actually in some cases, the more sustainable perfume is the more synthetic perfume.
Yes.
Synthetic can be a more sustainable way to achieve certain scent profiles and accords without over harvesting certain crops or resorting to, in some cases, animal mistreatment, because now we have pretty good synthetics that have recreated a lot of the maybe not in the fullness of their natural character, but pretty good, replacements for civet and things like that.
Right. And I think it can even be a byproduct. The byproduct of not so sustainably farmed ingredients can harm animals as a result. It can affect habitats. It can. And it can also affect communities. How well are these communities treated and appreciated and compensated? Because a lot of the perfume materials come from countries where their economies are not quite like ours.
It's kind of based on it, right? There's some countries where that's their GDP. That's their GDP. I was thinking when it comes to greenwashing, right? So the idea of greenwashing is that the company presents itself as if it is doing everything to protect the environment, because there's a lot of stakeholders in a company. So part of that is the marketing to the consumer. And just like the word oud sells a lot in fragrances, so does no parabens and none of this. And think about this. So in the hair field, it's the same thing. If the shampoo says calorie free, fat free, big deal. It shouldn't have it, right? So the same thing with the fragrance. They'll say, oh, we're this free or we're that free. Okay, that is expected. You're not doing anything special. But the fact that they say it now makes it more palatable and more attractive to the person that is like, oh, well, I need this to be, hyper green.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that it comes to that. It's the marketing. And so part of the business side of my brain says, hey, I get it. And that's okay. Do what you got to do to get your coins as long as you're honestly not harming, your environment or other human beings or other animals. It's bad when that greenwashing occurs and they are actively doing the bad thing. That's when it's okay to kind of unmask that reality so that the consumer can make the choice. Yeah, I'm still going to buy it. Or, oh, no, I'm not going to buy it. You know what I mean?
No. I know what you mean with that. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it is just about the bottom line is the most important thing. It's the same reason why, you have certain food products that say that they're gluten-free, but it's sort of a given because the food product is
wouldn't have gluten in the beginning.
It wouldn't have gluten in the first place. It doesn't have
gluten-free.
Yeah, it's the same idea. I just wanted to bring up Pep's suggestion. A good topic would be using best quality ingredients. I bookmarked that, and if we can't get into that tonight, I think that would be a great topic. Either to explore tonight or another time. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to check out the chat really quickly here. Hello, good to see you, Mark Gark. Green has no standard of meaning in the cosmetic industry. Yes.
I'm not sure it really has meaning in any industry at this point.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like all natural. Like, the thing that frustrates me so much is the chemophobia. It is this, it's maybe a naivete. I don't want to say ignorance because that suggests that people are, willfully ignorant. I think people are ignorant, not out of, there is an ignorance and people prey on that ignorance to make a profit. And I think that in the greenwashing movement, it really is in abundance. Honestly, a lot of the synthetic ingredients that are in a lot of consumer products have proven to be safe for use. Generally regarded as safe, seems to still read as evil to a lot of those who are about the clean living and the green living and stuff, because it isn't some sort of affirmative for them. And the only affirmative for them is if that it doesn't exist at all and it was natural. But the paradox with that is that we all know there are just as dangerous things that are pure and natural as it comes, that comes from nature. Yes. Some of the most poisonous things, some of the most toxic things like arsenic and arsenic comes from nature, and think of belladonna, nightshade, not the whole nightshade family. Well, this is what's not tomatoes, but the deadly nightshade. There are even the essential oils of certain plants have to be used in small quantities for that could be potentially harmful. You can't drink them because you could corrode the lining of your stomach, but it's natural. Yeah. Iodine's natural. It is an element. I mean, where do you draw the line between what is synthetic and what is what makes something natural? The whole concept of that, it's really debatable.
I would say the line is drawn individually. Where the problem occurs is where that individual looks to impose. You know what I'm saying? So my sister is allergic to star anise. So when I cook and I know she's coming, I will not use star anise. If she's not coming, guess what? I'm putting star anise into the red meat, no problem. And that's very natural. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the way I kind of think about it is, synthesize doesn't necessarily equal, or synthetic doesn't necessarily equal not natural, because it's being synthesized from a natural and it's being isolated, it's being fractioned, and they're taking that fraction and that's what they're using to produce. Then guess what? You're actually getting the best part of the natural thing so that it can be used for you, so that's why I say synthetics are not bad. They are not bad because they're synthetic by word only. Because when you think about it, the complete thing, let's say it's 8 parts, the synthesis is removing one of those 8 parts and then using it for fragrance. That's great. I think that's great. We do that with lemons and oranges. We don't necessarily use the peel and the rind and all of that and the seeds. We extract the juice, and that's what we drink. So that's essentially a quick explanation of a mechanical synthesis. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
No, exactly.
synthetic is not necessarily bad. Let's not hate on synthetics.
Well, it's even like these scaremongers who don't even want people to consume foods with natural flavors because there had to be some sort of synthesis in creating the natural flavor. Like, it isn't enough for the flavor to have a feedstock that's natural. Like, it has to be like actually, the raw material for some people who, are obsessed with everything that's natural. It drives me crazy because, I mean, you look at it this way, something that is petroleum based, the whole story of drawing a line. Petroleum, do we know what petroleum is, boys and girls? Do we know where that comes? I know that we don't want to use as much of it as we have been using, but do we know what that results from? That
it's a byproduct.
It's a byproduct, and it consists of, why do we call them fossil fuels?
Yeah.
It's fossilized vegetation, fossilized organic matter.
Yeah.
Right.
So
a lot of the smells that we call industrial, right? Coal burning, these things like that. Those aromas, those textures are still, grounded in natural, quote unquote, materials, right? Just because it's an industrial process does not mean that the core materials being used in that process aren't, naturally existing. Alcohol's been around forever. Alcohol smells astringent and chemical, but alcohol is a substance that has been around for ages, right?
Yeah.
So I think people very clearly understand, and this anxiety comes from a very genuine place that I want to say there's a lot of,
legitimate. It's legitimate for many people.
Yes. Lead in paint, asbestos used
Yes.
in, like there's a lot of anxiety caught up with this idea that materials have been used. I cannot trust industry to tell me what is safe for me because they will use things that then turn out to be unsafe later.
Right.
But the flip side of that is where the flip side of that doesn't quite work is, therefore, if it's natural, it's good for me, which is I hate to say it to everybody, but the world is full of things that can kill you. It's always true. There's no shortage of ways for you to die, even in the course of like the past 24 hours. Thankfully, you made it through. You survived the last 24 hours, but there's no shortage of ways for you to die, for you to have
from natural things.
From natural things.
It's right. But that whole greenwashing thing is it's I don't know. It's I feel like it's always been, you had mentioned it earlier, it's always been a part of business, and immediately what I started thinking about was snake oil salesmen. They'd be like, oh, this will make you feel better, this will do this will do that, and that's been the case for centuries. You've always had for example, in the first century, let's say, people who sold olive oil and alabaster, you had people who would say it's 100% pure alabaster, and it turned out it was actually mixed with other things. So you always are going to have the person that's going to market something as really good or quality or effective, and the reality is you never really know unless you're able to tell the difference. So fast forward a few thousand years, it's being done the same with fragrances and with food and with even clothing, being said that their carbon print is so and so. But I like what Shruti said.
Right. I wanted to highlight her comment. I know. Corporates usually buy carbon credits to make the 100% sustainability claims, the replanting of monoculture woodland. It isn't really all lollipops and rainbows. There's a lot of manipulation involved.
That's legal. Is it ethical? No. But is it
No,
legal?
but
Yes.
it's legal.
And there
Yeah.
are laws that are passed to make something say that it is organic or to say that it is natural. So they shift what a consensus would consider to be natural and create a law so that a business can now say this is natural. Why? Because there are so many factors when it comes to business. You know what I mean? And so sometimes you just can't give 100% of what the consumer wants, you know, but you still can now legally market it as it.
Hey, you know what we should do? Let's bottle up a sweaty old beaver's ass and sell it. Once upon a time,
Not long ago.
Ronce decided to take that idea and run with it. Oh God, guys, I really don't even want this to be in my room. Can you guys just carry on while I dispose of this properly? I'll be right back. I don't even want it in this room. Hold on a second.
Animalic in the worst way, I guess.
So I know we have 3 fragrances, right? We were 3 fragrances to bring up, but I have the 3 fragrances that I wanted to talk about, but I also have 3 backup fragrances. I was thinking, yeah. So the first ones are the ones I wanted to talk about, essentially because they were part of the beginning of the fragrance journey this time around. And then the other ones are fragrances that I've recently been just like, when I say falling in love, like falling in love with, you know, like one of them is a fragrance that I wore for 7 days straight. And the first day was one thing, and it just kept becoming better and better. And it's Costa Blanca Musk. This is from Primera Perfumes Kuwait. Okay. I absolutely love it. I love it. I love it. It I don't know. It just blew my mind. I enjoyed wearing it, and I got tons of compliments. Do I wear fragrance for compliments? I don't. But I get surprised when the fragrance does something to the smeller that has them say something to me, because I'm the kind of person that doesn't necessarily get compliments. You know, 6 feet tall, very big. So people will be like, he smells good, but won't tell me. So when they come and tell me that, I'm like, oh, wow, this is interesting.
I hear that. I don't get a lot of compliments. It's always, I don't wear things for compliments, but it's always nice when you do, right? Because it's kind of I don't know. It's just nice to get feedback. I almost would like feedback of one kind or another. Like I would love if somebody told me that, like, oh, I hate what you're wearing today. Even just recognizing that it's a part of who I am is kind of nice, because you know.
Yes, I feel the same way. I love how you express. I'm gonna paraphrase and put that incepted into my little quiver of phrases.
So, guys, I actually had to open the window. It's just like, even after getting rid of that scent strip, like, it's
a little cold. But that reminds me of when somebody sent me a bunch of.
I got this.
A bunch of indie house samples from like Arige and all these places, and I had sampled them all, and my room smelled like that for like 5 days. It didn't. I had like the air filter going on, and it didn't help. That's when your fragrance is nuclear. Sometimes you just can't get rid of it. But so the musk fragrance that you just mentioned. So what's the overall scent profile there? Like,
so it is. So Costa Blanca Musk, I know that when I first smelled it, it made me think of one of my other favorite fragrances. So it's florally, but it's more musk. You get this gorgeous musk. You get I want to say it's almost gourmandy. You get it. It's best way to explain it is a Western Middle Eastern gourmand. Does that make sense? Like, you know how a pure Middle Eastern is going to be very strong. You know, it's going to be very. This one it's not too strong, and I think that's part of why people liked it. In one of the videos that I made, a lady was, so it projects, that's why I say that. It projects bonkers, but it's not offensive. That was the phrase I created for this. It projects bonkers, but it's not offensive. I was sitting at the bar. I was working at a hotel. I was sitting at the bar. The elevator is a good, like, I want to say at least 4 meters away from me. The lady walks out and she smelled it and she followed the scent and came over to me. I have the episode. Her name is Emily. She was with her daughter and she just fell in love with it. So this is one that I've fallen in love with.
I wanted to bring up Kicks and Sense comment here. Whenever I see someone like Russian Adam diving into a heaping pile of fresh civet, I just don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm not refined enough for this hobby. Well, let me tell you something. I love civet as material, and I'm fascinated with the scent of raw, of pure civet, or even the synthetic facsimile thereof. Here is my gripe with these, some of these indie houses and small batch exclusive. I don't know what do you call them, Ryan? What are these, like a Rouge L'Adore and whatever Russia?
Small batch was correct, right? Because I respect them because they create the molecules, the material, right? They go through the whole process of developing and making it. So
it depends. Yeah. I mean, some of them do their own extractions and they have their own, their own still to do the extractions. But
think of them as like a particularly like unique corner of like indie, which is like materials focused. Like it's very like,
right.
It's a brand identity that is built around like, I built this perfume around X material, and like this is, and it's a small batch of this kind of rare material. And Sir Oud, Russian Adam, a number of these fragrances where it's kind of like a raw material as the backbone, and then things are kind of attached to it. Mm-hmm. You were gonna go and give your
So civet, how it's been traditionally used in fragrance, at what quantity and for what effect. If we're looking at more classical perfumery, we're looking back, going as far back as when it began to be used. Perfumery was a very different thing. Shamans and priests were putting together things. So I don't know if they're trying to reproduce that, but if we're looking at kind of like classic perfumery, civet was meant to be sort of an accent. It meant to be something that was sort of like in the behind the curtain, if you will, kind of doing some work to illuminate what else is going on in the fragrance. And I think my issue with some of these smaller, more hands-on houses that create these very materials-rich blends is there is this fetishism, this glorification of materials almost to a point of the obscene or the absurd, where the civet is no longer doing its nuanced work anymore, but is sort of being put front and center in a way that maybe it, for most of history, since it was used as a material, was never really how it was intended. So my response to Kicks and Sense is that you may very well appreciate civet in the way that it was used in perfumery, at least in the past, 200 years. But what they're doing is a little bit more Kabbalistic, and it's not really my favorite thing. I appreciate it for what it is, but it's intense, and it's not, a lot of it's not necessarily, dare I say, wearable in a public environment.
I mean, everybody has their different threshold for that stuff. But I agree. I don't particularly enjoy wearing it. It's also not the style of perfumery I gravitate to, because it feels, I don't want to, the term that comes to mind is unstructured, but that's too harsh. It's not unstructured because they have a structure, but it's not
artisanal. Yes, Darren.
what I like in perfume is very much the feeling that there has been like a very artificial structure applied to aroma. It's not just like a natural thing that I found and like splashed on my body. Like I went outside and like rolled in dirt and I smell like dirt because I put dirt on my skin. It's like there's a crafted element, like between a painting of a landscape and the actual landscape itself. Like there's an artificially manicured.
I love that.
Right. Yeah. So for me, it's very much the feeling of like of a constructed experience that unfolds over time, and that's what I enjoy in a perfume. Is a perfume should smell to like, even when a perfume smells natural, it should smell natural in an artificially constructed way that you are enjoying that natural experience in the most like perfect way that the perfumer intends for you to do. Like, this is a perfume that's meant to evoke the walk through the fields. Well, this is the most transcendent walk through a field that you've ever had, right? Like it's not, you know, it's not just unfiltered. And I think a lot of those raw material focused, and not all of them, but some of them just tend to feel a little bit more structurally kind of gloopy. Like, here's like very nice oud, and we've you know, glommed on some patchouli in the base and things like that to bring out different facets of it, but it doesn't have the structural clarity that I think like a lot of like what I think of, and this I'm somewhat biased in this, and this is a cultural and social bias as much as anything, but like what you find in some very refined like classical French perfumery. I think one of the reasons perfume snobs like grasp onto something like a Guerlain classic is just because of how structurally ornate it is. It's like walking in a cathedral. You can't like walk in there and not be impressed by the architecture of it. It's just, it's very immediately sound. And it's harder for me to get excited about these other perfumes, even though I believe in enjoying raw materials for what they are. I agree with the core hypothesis that like ambergris on its own can be a perfume unto itself. Oud on its own can be a perfume unto itself. I actually kind of wholeheartedly understand that, but it's also not necessarily what I'm in this hobby for.
I actually prefer to wear oud atars than I'm more into wearing those than a lot of oud fragrances. I mean, certainly with commercial oud fragrances, you're getting some sort of interpretation of oud. And obviously, you know, if you're talking about naturals, you forget about it. It's very little to none. Except that Ron say, I'm convinced there's natural castoreum in that more so than oud. But I still can't get that off my mind. It's just earring out of my room. But getting back to the naturalism in fragrance. So I love fragrances that are agrestic. Now, for those who aren't aware of things that are agrestic, it's sort of like, imagine something that is evocative of like the countryside and you know, something pastoral and a little rough around the edges because it's more outdoorsy. And I love agrestic scents. However, don't be mistaken. You know, a lot of them are perfumes because it's sort of like you said, not really a hyper-realism, but a surrealism. It's kind of like taking this realism and coloring it in a very artful and fantastic way. And I love that that is what sets perfume apart from something that is literal. I love that. Perfumes that try too hard to be literal, I think they've kind of fall short of expectations, because take, for example, like gourmands. Like some gourmands to me are too literally like edible smelling for me, because there isn't something to kind of make it more perfumistic. You have that if you have something kind of like green and bitter to pull the sweetness in another direction, or you have something that you wouldn't expect to be juxtaposed with something, that's to me, that to me is what really makes perfumery stand apart from something that's more like a literal olfactory interpretation of something. And
I think
that was my ramble for the night. That was my
thank
TED
you.
talk for the night.
I wanted to kind of go back to
Yeah.
what was being said as far as the material focused artisanal houses. I believe that's
Hey, just wanted to say hello. Hi, how are you doing, my friend?
how's
Go
it
ahead,
going?
go ahead, Marcial.
I feel like that's why they do batches, because they're catering to a specific number of people, right? And if you'll notice, that batch will sell out. So there is a market for that. Let's say if it's civet heavy, there's out of a million people, there will be a few hundreds that will say, you know what, I want to see what it smells like on its own and how this person was able to produce it. And so curiosity may be the reason for the purchase. There's a market for them. You know what I mean? And then what was the other thing you had just mentioned? Anyways, lost it. My brain kind of lost it.
Well,
Let molecules on.
I can help you, Marcial. So I was talking about surrealism versus realism. Was that the?
Okay, yes, the
Yeah,
gourmand. Thank you so much. You're the
yeah,
best.
yeah.
Okay, and so in recent conversation, I had one of my favorite fragrances, Luna. It smells very edible. And so what I realized, there are people who flip over it because how good it smells. And then there are people who say, I wouldn't wear it. Like they recognize it's a nice fragrance, but they say, I wouldn't wear it because it smells like food. And I don't want to wear something that smells like food. That blew my mind because that conversation was about 3 different people within the same week. And I says, so there are noses that actually don't want to smell like something edible. And it bothers them. And they want to get that perfume kind of nuance. So, it blows my mind, the variety in noses. Thank you
No,
so much
no.
for that, for bringing me back. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Paroli makes a brilliant statement here, mistaking the paint for the painting. I love using analogs like this. So you think in art, obsession with that material, and if you're paying tribute to the materials, how do you do that in a way that has respect to the materials? Like whether whatever your medium might be. I mean, what's the message that you're going to convey? And I think that with some perfumers who may be self-taught, much like myself, because I was self-taught, I didn't go to perfumery school. The initial fascination, it really comes from being overwhelmed by the materials themselves and like how they smell and what you can do with them. And I don't know if this is like a really a bold statement, but I think that when someone is still at that stage of their perfume making journey, it can reflect in their final product where they haven't been able to kind of hash out the mechanics, like how these materials perform and respect them for what they are. Like it isn't really enough to say, I have a lot of these rare, opulent, natural ingredients. I throw them together and boom, I have a perfume, because those materials can't do the work themselves. We got to look at these materials as in almost individual perfumes in themselves. We're talking about specifically naturals. So they're complex on their own. They have all these different components in them. So when you think about the interactions between all these materials, it's just like you said, Ryan, it becomes sort of globby and muddy. It's kind of like when in painting, you love all the colors. You just want to throw all those colors together. You throw the purple with the orange, and the green would look great just smack dab on that. And then after a while, it's muddy. It's obscured. You don't really. It's kind of like I kind of see it a little bit more in a way of where you're kind of creating shades and tints along, you know what I mean? Than to kind of, I don't know, just throw everything together and say, this is a product that's based on the quality of the ingredients rather than this is a perfume.
I mean, I think it's, yeah, and I think it's a it's a thin line to do that. But I agree with you in terms of like respecting the materials. Like ideally, if I were to create a metaphor for what I think a material focused perfume should be, it would be like something that, so like there's a difference to go to another analogy. There's a difference between looking at like a raw stone in like a natural history museum that's been set on a pedestal, like a cool geode or something like that, and then something that's been incorporated into a meticulously crafted piece of jewelry, a particular stone that's been beautifully faceted and set in a beautiful setting alongside other gemstones. Jewelry is beautiful, but there can be something beautiful about the raw material too. But to enjoy that raw material, it shines best when it's kind of set apart and lit in just the right way, and you can view it from multiple angles. And if you're going to take an ingredient that has a lot of complexity and a really rich natural, in my personal preference would be to set it in a way that it's less part of a dense fog of materials than it is almost like the materials are supporting it in a way that it helps it stand alone almost. It's almost like the materials are just helping it shine brighter than it ordinarily would.
I totally can envision what you're saying. Totally. As you were speaking, so my mind was thinking of an amethyst, right? And because I remember going to the museum and the first time I saw it, and so the other materials that would be used would, let's say it is oud, right, would be the amethyst. The other materials would be the light, would be the pedestal, would be, the mechanism that allows it to rotate so you can see it differently. As you were speaking, that's what was being painted in my mind. So I totally appreciate
that. And to be fair, that's no small feat. Like
no,
to do something like that is very difficult perfumery, and even master perfumers don't always succeed in that endeavor. So
right.
This is one reason, I feel like I could be a broken record at this point because we all talk about the same perfumes we love over and over again. But this is one reason that I really like, some perfumers like Lorenzo Villoresi, who has like a very keen sense of like the materials he's working with and finds some very interesting ways of pulling out different facets. He doesn't do like a soliflor in the way that we're kind of like talking about, like an oud soliflor or anything like that. He hasn't even done an oud perfume. He's kind of refused to do it.
Yeah, he doesn't really mess around with that.
Yeah. He said he won't. He said he's like, what would be the point of me doing an oud perfume at this point? There's so many out there. But that's one reason I like a lot of aromatic perfumery in particular, is because those elements get to stand out in the midst of a perfume.
Yeah. On the other hand, so one point I want to make, therein lies the challenge of natural perfumery, because it's much more of a challenge to allow those materials to do what they do best, because there's almost a competition with other very complicated and complex and gregarious materials, and then but then you also, from what I recall, or my earliest days trying to do natural perfume, is some materials get buried because they're a little bit more introverted and soft spoken.
Yep. So you don't even notice that they're there.
Right. So you handling it with care and making sure something doesn't override it and swallow it and gulp it down, and you don't even have it. You can't even detect it in the blend. Which is why I gave up on natural perfumery. I'm like, F this. Like, it's just too difficult. I think it takes a certain skill, a certain talent, which I think is rare, to be able to do a natural perfume that has that ability for breathing room between the material, like to have that ability to understand those materials with such a deftness and such a care, which is why I'm into few natural perfumers as it is. Now, with conventional perfumery, using the media of synthetics
and things,
you have so many things that can help facilitate that. And you have the ability with these synthetics to do exactly what Ryan said, to bring the best out of a material, to really to let it show all of its dimensions and its shine and its beauty. And but also you have that ability to do, like, with what we are sentience, that the sum has to be bigger than the parts, which can be true for, you know, maybe a fragrance that really wants to highlight basil or highlight rose, but also that really rare skill of making something so cohesive that you don't know where one thing ends and the other thing begins. Now that's different from gloppiness, because you experience all those colors, but the way that those colors are put together, it's almost like a mosaic, and you're seeing it from very far away, so it blends into a picture. You can't really tell what parts are there, but it's a beautiful perfume nonetheless.
It's all about
And
ratios, right? Like ratios.
You think about Guerlain and Coty and Caron, your earliest perfume houses, they were moving away from the soliflor, and they were endeavoring in that. And some of those classic earlier perfumes are examples of that. And I love that, but I also love the essential kind of bringing it back to kind of a soliflor, solo note theme, or like something that focuses on just a couple of notes, which we started to see again, you know, in the past, I don't know, 30 years or so. You know, where some of my favorite fragrances are those where it's like, let's take this idea, like let's do carnation, let's do sandalwood, let's do vetiver, and really make this interpretation of it built around that as the nucleus. You know, I think actually vetiver, now that I think of it, is
What I was thinking about vetiver. As soon as you were speaking about that, I was thinking vetiver.
One of the first.
Vetiver it blew me away. I hated vetiver, but I loved how they did it, because they reintroduced me to vetiver, but they did it in such a nice, soft, powdery way that then after that, I was able to start smelling other vetiver fragrances and not be turned off. So that's one thing. The other one, there's a tuberose forward fragrance. It's called Atlantide, and I didn't know that I liked tuberose until I smelled it, and then I was able to recognize tuberose. There's another one called Magnolia. I don't remember who makes it, but it's called Magnolia, and I never consciously smelled Magnolia, but this fragrance, it's not only Magnolia, but it's the one that's mainly there, and then all the other notes kind of just like fluttered around it and gave it. It's like they served as its wings, you know?
Yeah, it's sort of like how the usage of carrot seed lifts and extends iris in ways that, you know.
Love with carrot seed. Can I tell you something? I thought carrot seed was carrot seed. And so then I go and I research, and I'm like, oh, it's not actual like carrot seed. I saw that it's like I don't know if it's a plant or whatever, but it looked like a little, what would you call it? But it looked like a little bush.
So carrot seed, it comes from wild carrot, where the cultivated carrot comes from. So the cultivated carrot has been, genetic modification. Carrots were not always these huge. There was always a carotene element, but it was a bit dull. But they've been bred to be larger and more carotene rich. But they all carrots that we consume derive from the wild carrot, Darcus carotis. If in the summertime you see, maybe I'll take you off from the spotlight there. Queen Anne's lace, the Queen Anne's lace flower, that is your wild carrot. They grow in abundance in the summertime as a wildflower. Beautiful flowers, but they are considered weeds, but they're wildflowers. They're beautiful. Okay. And that is where we get carrot seed oil. And those carrots, wild carrots, are much more of a duller orange and tiny and full of roots that come out of the rhizome. It doesn't come in as any surprise that carrot seed is adjacent to the scent profile of iris, because iris, orris root, Our orris is actually a rhizome as well. So the similarities. But yeah, what I was trying to point out is that these materials that are in a composition, if you see a notes breakdown, a lot of the time, you know, the notes that are there are really in an effort to build upon who is the star of the fragrance. And carrot seed is one prime example of that. But yeah, another ramble from me. This is just a rambling kind of night. What were you saying, Marcial?
Pink pepper is another one, right? Pink pepper can support the rose, right?
Pink pepper is sort of a supporting note. You wouldn't want to have a whole overdose of pink pepper. It would be a little too pungent and a little too much for the nose. But pink pepper gives you that little bit of a lift. There are certain materials that lift something else up. It doesn't quite have its lift on its own, but you got that lift to get it out into the stratosphere, out, sillage, have it to throw into the air and throw off your body. It's like, but bergamot exists for that reason. That's why most fragrances have bergamot. Bergamot is there even when you probably don't even see it on the notes pyramid. It has a role. A lot of these materials have a role. So, yeah. The end. Let's move on to the next subject. We went from greenwashing to talking about perfume materials. That's what it's all about here. Marcial, you mentioned the topic of the fragrance community at large that isn't included in our circles of social media content creation, and et cetera. And I wanted you to just sort of touch upon that and tell us your thoughts on this, the people that you run into day to day who may enjoy perfume but may have absolutely no knowledge of all this funny business that we do online.
Yeah, listen, it's fascinating because within the last 2 months, I've been focusing more on being conscious of the fragrance conversations I have. Every day, I have fragrance conversations. It's such a part of my life. I didn't think to like, I guess, give it its respect, I'll say. And what I realized is, from the bus driver, from the teacher, from the hotel worker, to the concierge, to the coffee barista, there are people who know more about fragrance than I do, meaning like they've purchased more fragrances, or they were connected more to like 5 fragrances in their life, and they understood those fragrances so well that I've learned from them. And these are people that have no social media presence. And so, and then when I do ask them, they may not even know about Fragrantica or Perfumo or Sacre Bon. You know what I mean? Like, they don't know about these things. Everything that they speak has been from their experience. They found out about the notes, or they were able to recognize notes from their regular life. And that helped me really appreciate and put things in perspective, right? Sometimes when we are in the social media environment, it becomes our universe, but it's beautiful and it's sobering to recognize that the social media environment, or the social media universe, is a small speck in the actual world of fragrance enthusiasts and fragrance lovers, and the actual world of fragrance, the fragrance community. And so that's been my experience. And I've been asking people, hey, do you mind? Like, for example, I posted today one where I was speaking to a hotel, the person that manages the hotel. And I says, do you mind if I record the conversation? And I brought some fragrances to smell. I always carry fragrances to smell, right? And so I presented him with some, and he smelled one fragrance, and he was like, oh, you know what? Off of the paper, it smells like this. I didn't know that, but he's correct, But then my thing is always, okay, paper was done, tested on skin, and then it became something else. And I love seeing that. Like, they give me some education, but then I give them an experience. You know what I mean? And so that is part of the fragrance community. So that has helped me appreciate it so much more and recognize goodness. It's a beautiful community, and we're connected. We don't know each other, but we're connected because of the love of fragrance, and we're able to have a 4-hour, no exaggeration, 5-hour conversation about fragrances.
Right. Take, for example, me. I have been into fragrance for, God, I mean, years, 16, 17 plus years. I mean, I don't know if what exactly is a starting point when you become a complete nerd about it, but it's been a long time. I mean, I've been wearing fragrances since I was very young, but I had little to no interaction at all with the fragrance community until 2020.
Look at that.
So I was one of those people.
So when you started learning how to make perfumes, it was before. Wow.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Like, I didn't even interact with like any fragrance community. I was interacting with the perfume making community. Like, that's who a lot of people who I know, like, that's how I met Christophe Laudamiel. Like, I knew him from perfume making forums. That's how I first started talking to him. That's for how I first started talking to James Elliott. That's for a lot of the independent perfume. Like John, actually, we were friends. John Beeble and I were friends before I even thought about perfume making.
I love him.
But yeah, it's funny. I was told that, like, yeah, you gotta be careful with the fragrance community. They're kind of crazy. I always like telling people this. Like, I don't know if you really want to get into the forums and all that, and like people just said, like, yeah, you're just better off, like, just focusing on your perfume making and don't really involve yourself in that for the time being until you create a brand or something. But come pandemic, a lot of time was on our hands, and I just sort of dabbled with the idea of sharing fragrances on Instagram, and then it really accelerated by the time the pandemic was in full swing. So I relate to this because, like, I was one of them. Like, I had no knowledge of it, but I still think I was part of the fragrance community.
You absolutely were. The fragrance community has all of that. Listen, people who work in flower shops are part of the fragrance community, because guess what? You have a conversation with them about a floral fragrance, they're going to be able to recognize things, Sommeliers are also part of it. Talking about John Beeble, he has created for me, he has, in my mind, in my noses experience, one of the best labdanum accords, period, point blank, ever. Like, after smelling his labdanum, he made it for Perfumology. Now I'm able to recognize labdanum in other fragrances and understand that when I smell an amber, it's not just the vanilla that's giving me that sweetness. The labdanum may also be working in there. So props to him. Yeah, so that's exciting. You were part of that I'm gonna say the real, fragrance community.
The real people, not the ones.
Yes.
Duncan, my first fragrance review that I shared online was in 2020. Like, you can scroll all the way back to, like, I don't know, I never shared a fragrance review before 2020. The only things fragrance related online were when I was, like, learning how to make perfume. I put my first one in for Grantiga in 2020, so it was less than 3 years ago. Ryan, what do you think we can learn from those individuals who aren't part of the conversation online? What perspective do you think that we can get from the community at large who isn't making a presence on social media and all that jazz?
I think, well, the one thing I think that perspective always helps us to get out of is the way this community is very insular and builds up very group thinky sorts of tastes and ways of interacting with fragrance. And we all have our little fiefdom, so to speak, that we are part of in the fragrance community. But I always am happy to talk to someone outside of this sphere, because I don't know, I'm a very pretentious person at the best and worst of times.
Nonsense.
I think it's very good to bring me back to what the core pleasure of perfume is, which is essentially pleasure. It is very much an art form that is very directly channeled to pleasure in a way that some other art forms aren't. But like cooking and consuming food, it's a very sensual experience, and it's rooted in sensual pleasure. in the very just like base definition of the words there.
Sense, yeah, taste and smell and tact.
Exactly. And I appreciate that outside of our constructs for the ways we think about perfume, or the critical constructs that we do, or the way we construct our personal identities or our themes of our collections, the way people who buy perfume but aren't necessarily like strongly invested in this world have perspectives on it that aren't shaped by it. It tends to be a very much more raw personal experience with perfume. And in many ways, I enjoy that more than some of the kind of guarded discussions of perfumes or highly opinionated discussions of perfume that you get. There's something really fun about very strong, like, I like it, I hate it kinds of reactions to perfume, at least from someone who is kind of open-minded. I mean, there's nothing fun to be had with any sort of engagement with somebody who's already closed off to experience, but someone who has an openness to experience and is experiencing something for the first time, a very raw sense of that experience with their tastes and how that interacts in that moment is very exciting to me. And I think you get a lot more of that outside the boundaries of this like very narrowly defined fragrance community.
Absolutely.
And that's a beautiful thing, and that helps pull me back to what this is. I think there's a bit like the fragrance community is not one-to-one with like the fashion community, but fragrance and fashion have parallels, and they have been historically linked as industries.
Right.
And you see the similar kind of like divide between like the diehard fashion people who are actually paying attention to running shows and like which designers are which are running which, which designer
are deserving of accolade, and which ones should be thrown in the trash,
Exactly. And I actually follow some of these folks and watch their channels, and they're very intelligent, and they help me appreciate avant-garde fashion in a way that I ordinarily wouldn't. But I also appreciate the responses of people who, just like clothes because they like to wear clothes. And their style isn't picked from a curated list of things for them. Like the difference between someone who has like built their style because this is the style that is kind of like blessed by the people who know, someone who has come up with a very personal, idiosyncratic sense of style. They dress differently, but it works. They've found the balance and musicality in how they put that outfit together, and it's kind of a beautiful personal statement. I kind of enjoy that in the way that like fragrance can be a very personal thing. And if anything, what I hate most about this community is that the way that the emphasis on visual presentation has kind of sucked the personality out of it. Like,
yeah,
I it's always the same, like very polished lit shelves of fragrances, generally the same kinds of fragrances, like lined up, backlit with the LED strips. Like very
like all standing sentinel, like almost intimidating. Like that would intimidate the average person. Like
it looks like you just walked into a perfume store. It's very personal.
Yeah, like I have like this little, like this over here, even I feel like is kind of like overwhelming to anybody in the real world. And it's not even that much, but I do have like a closet where it's just like nothing is in order, and I kind of love it. It's just like the city of fragrances. They're not even like organized by like house, but I totally know what you mean. I mean, it is kind of like more about, it can be more about the presentation and the object and the possession of the object and actually the experience itself.
Well, I mean, the discourse is a lot of the times it's like, look, here's the box, and I took here's the batch code. I love the cap. The cap is great on
I love this magnetic cap.
That's fun. That's fun. I think it's fun. I enjoyed
It could be
when I
fun.
started coming in. I loved watching that. I love people talking about how it was heavy and how it was flimsy and how. And I tell you something though. So one of the people I was speaking with yesterday, they were talking about Acqua di Gio, the Profumo, and
Mhm.
how they had their first purchase of a Acqua di Gio had a magnetic cap, and they purchased the Profumo and it didn't have the magnetic cap. They loved the Profumo more than the other one they purchased, but they were still disappointed that there was no magnetic cap. And it's so, you know me, I'm gonna ask because the psychology of it calls my attention, right? So I asked them why was that important to them, and they said that they like the experience of hearing the, you know, and turning it. I says, oh wow, so you have consumers that are tactile, and so that feeling of the magnet attracts them, and it just adds to the whole experience of wearing the fragrance. I was like, oh wow. I said, write them a letter, tell them how you feel. But those little things that appear to be nothing, maybe to 85% of us, there's that 15% that it is actually important. You know what I mean? For me, I just care about the juice. Give me good juice in a simple bottle with a simple cap. I don't need any of the frivol. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
give me the juice.
On the other hand, I can kind of relate to the magnetic cap thing to a degree. I mean, caps not so much, but I am just as much a visually oriented I, I mean, maybe I'm just a Renaissance man. I love my music. I love my visual art. I like things visual. I like smell, and I can get overwhelmed. And I have actually, and this is a confession, I've actually been less inclined to go full bottle on certain houses because I don't like the way the bottle looks. Like I'll just as well have a decant. It's so that is testament to the fact that I love the collecting aspect, and the collecting often does involve. I mean, of course, like I'm not just getting bottles because I like the way the bottle look. I have to like the fragrance as well. But I'm just as happy having something just as a decant if I think that the bottle is ugly.
Not so attractive. That's
It's
fascinating.
kind of sad, and I'm sure people are like, "Is this guy serious?" Like, but it's kind of true because, like,
And it's okay.
in the end, like it doesn't really matter because I already have enough anyways, so I can be more picky at this point. Like, oh yeah, I'm not going to really explore that house because their bottles they look shitty.
Hello.
And if I really like a fragrance, I'll just get a decant of it. I'll just ask somebody if they have a little extra they can share with me. So yeah, but I digress. Ryan, you were talking about the backlit bottles and all that sort of stuff.
I was just saying, it just takes some of the personality out of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
It can. Yeah, it can. It can. And when it's like, it's almost like it's untouchable. It's like they're not lived in. Like I always think to myself, like, man, I just want my fragrances to the bottles that I have to look a little bit more lived in. Like I was so thrilled. I was like, oh God, for once I have a bottle that has like a somewhat of a dent that I can share a picture of when I did my opium review. So people don't think like I don't use any fragrance. I'm like, here you go. There's a fragrance that has a dent in it. Are you happy? But yeah, it seems very far removed from the rest of the world to have this. It's almost like an altar. Like this is my collection. It's my altar. Everything.
But it's also just like, I don't know. Like what frustrates me more about the altar is actually probably less the altar itself and more that it's all the same fragrances over and over.
You're talking about people who they collect based on like just a lot of the same style, or just like so completist when it comes to like certain houses. You mean like it's just like fragrance du bois, 50 bottles of it? Yeah, is it that? Yeah.
I'm not a Marie Kondo-y style minimalist, and neither is she anymore. If you saw the recent news story,
No, because she had kids and she lightened up.
But I very much believe that it is beneficial that if you're going to buy things, they are things that you have some personal stake and relationship to. And I don't like I don't like the idea of people buying clothes that they don't particularly like, that are just like they don't have some personal like impact to, or buying, like, if you're going to have something in your life, like, make it something that your life is going to benefit from having there. And it just feels like a lot of people buy in this hobby, end up buying stuff to just check it off a list. And that's me. And and it's frustrating to me, not in the sense that I'm an observer of that. It's frustrating more than I feel like they've lost something in this whole experience. Like, it's like, go discover stuff. Like, it's more fun if you find the fragrance that nobody else is talking about. I guarantee you, it's a lot more fun to go have found like an undiscovered gem than it is to have bought the one fragrance that everybody has been hyping up for.
Oh yeah, well, I definitely have made a little bit of a side career on that. That's for sure. I got plenty of those at this point. to a vault, but I love that. I love like rooting for some, like, whether it's like vintage fragrances that have, you know, they haven't really been given their due respect, or these current houses and perfumers that aren't getting enough attention that they deserve, and rooting for the underdog. Like, I think that is important. I'm not the type of person who, and I'm not saying this like to judge other people. Like, I don't, as much as I love the 6 Frederick Mall, which is more than what anybody would even imagine happening. I get it. The 6 Frederick Mall fragrances that I love, which are probably among the poorest selling ones, but that's another point. I don't think that I don't see them as sort of like the standard, the paragon. Like, I'm more realistic about it. Like, Chanel, not necessarily the paragon. Not everything that they make blows me away. Or Hermes, same thing. Not everything blows me away. Think of like certain houses that have this esteem. Like, I don't have this attitude that like everything that they release is gold and I must have it on my shelf. Like, it's like, curating involves more. I mean, and just the idea of curating as a perfume nerd is really lost on most of the public too. That's a whole other story as well. But to curate is, let's find this one fragrance from this house that just resonated with you. And that's okay. It's just one, and you have it, and you want to share it with people. Like, I'm kind of like more into that. Like, somebody discovered like this particular fragrance from a smaller house or whatever, where it's just, you know, they want to share. Like for example, there's one Rock River Melody. Adam Forziati shared a sample of it with me, and I was just like awestruck. I was like, oh my God, from this house Regime de Fleur, which I thought was like a complete joke. I didn't even know that they had like a good, but I was like, I fell in love with it.
That's
dope. I fell in love with it. Like, am I interested in like completing the whole fucking line of Regime de Fleur? No.
Right. That makes sense. You know, I have a few friends that again, it goes back to kind of that whole mentality, the psychology behind it, right? So you have people that are collectors, and if they get one, they have to get them all, because you know what I mean? And so I've asked, why? You know, because I clearly am not one of those. If you look at that, I'm clearly not one of those. But so I've asked why, and for them, it's just a matter of having things structural, and they want to feel that it's complete. For them, that's the word that the 4 different people I've asked, each one's used the word complete. And I says, okay, I respect that and I get it. It's almost like a card collector or a stamp collector. You know what I mean? So the stamp collector or the card collector is willing to pay thousands of dollars for something that was 50 cents when it first came out, because they have to complete it. And I think that that's what happens sometimes with fragrances, and that's okay, because then the people who can connect with that kind of mental framework will say, okay, there you go. That's somebody that's speaking my language, you know?
Yeah. I think it all depends on like our own individual relationship with material objects and how they fulfill us. Like, I've already been doing my own work on my relationship with material objects, and I realize it's not the material objects that are an issue. It's my emotions and being in touch with them, like,
No way.
and yeah, like often, we find out whether it's through therapy or whatever
For
means or outlet,
self-reflection, right?
that you realize that it isn't, the buying or the collecting that's
I
the
love
issue.
that.
It's it could have something to do with trauma or your emotions and being in touch with your emotions, and it all manifests itself in different ways. And I see it coming, with a certain frag heads, because let's face it, a lot of us frag heads deal with these things like the world at large, but it's evident in how we get obsessive over our stuff. Not all of us, but
Stop therapy.
Shop therapy, and then in shop therapy becomes shop addiction. And
Hello.
but yeah. So for one person, it might be, not even so much like having this true love affair with every single fragrance in their collection, but it's more like a control thing. Like, I'll feel good, I'll feel complete once my collection from this house is complete, and I have all of them all kind of like in a row and immaculate and stuff. And it's that is their thing. And I don't really relate to that in particular, but then there's going to be so much of the world who doesn't relate to the fact that I have 800, it's, yeah.
But for you, it makes sense. And for us that understand, it makes sense. You've learned how to make fragrances. You love exploring them. There's over 2,000 fragrances that come out per year in the last, 15, 16 years. Before that, it took 10 years for a house to put out a fragrance. Now 10 fragrances come out in a year from the house, So the 800 is reasonable. I remember when I started.
I don't know about that, but
I remember when I started, I said 9 was going to be my tops. And then I said 15. And then I said 30. And then I said 45. So I remember thinking 45, 50. Who's going to have 50 fragrances? It becomes easy to have 50 fragrances.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that.
It's easy when you get into a hobby, to a certain extent, and you get hooked. What was I going to say, though? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I'm getting fatigued now. Like, I am less inclined to collect because I'm overwhelmed. Like, I don't really have much room to add anything else. And I kind of value I value storage space. I value, and I think that the thing is that you can say that when you're at 200 and then 400 and then 600, but there has to be a point where it's like, enough is enough. Enough is enough. I wanted to just show this one because I just think it's so funny. That was my Arrogance Porum review. I said, Daddy likes. I love that you remember that. I think in a little bit what we should do, guys, is just share our 3 current wares, our 3 current infatuations. Fernando, good to see you. I know that you left this quite some time ago. I'm very far behind in the chat.
Fernando.
So this is, I just wanted to draw our attention to the chat a little bit and just catch up on this. Kicks and Sense, it's an innocence almost. I think sometimes that too much knowledge is a bad thing and that it ruins what made something so fun to begin with. I 100% agree on this. And that's where some of the fatigue comes from. Like, I feel like I need to sort of recalibrate, exactly, reset. I think that having these live streams kind of helps, because it kind of redirects the attention on other aspects of fragrance. It is a great outlet, I think, for a lot of us. Balenciaga means all hail. All right. We are sentient. That's why I use abstract backgrounds and my stuff ain't displayed well, more stacked. Yeah, I don't know if people think my photos are boring, but I don't really use too many props. I just want to highlight the bottle itself. Like, hey, here's the bottle, and I like it. Scent of the Day, Still Life in Rio by Olfactive Studio.
Hueles rico, Fernando. Hueles rico.
Max, I'm so sorry that we neglected your message for about 10 minutes ago. Hello, guys. I'm currently wearing Varanasi Vimeo Fuchimi. Have you tried that one? What do you think
Male
of it?
Fushimi.
Have you guys heard of that one?
I've heard of Male Fushimi, the house. I haven't tried any of their fragrances.
Mm. We are sending, it's like unread coffee table books that everyone has. So, yes. Yes, the unread coffee table books. Like, yeah. That's a good comparison for sure. Shruti Joshi, there is an element of escapism to collecting for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely, the escapism from uncomfortable feelings can be met through certain behaviors, and one of those is collecting and buying. Perfume Temple. Response to Max. Very complex, difficult. I tried it at Accents last year and I was impressed, but I was wondering about the actual use I could make of it. Question for the chat from Envy. Does anyone or does someone have Rochas Eau de Rochas for women from 1970 in its current form? Just ordered a bottle and was curious for experiences. Thanks. Funny that you ask, but I was considering I like how like sad I am. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting tired of collecting. But, I was thinking of getting Eau de Rochas for women. No, actually, and I heard that it's better than the Eau de Rochas for men. So I wish I could tell you, but I heard some great things about that one. Ryan, do you have either of those, or do you like some of the citrus aromatics, don't you?
I don't have Eau de Rochas. Sorry, I was a little distracted, but I don't have Eau de Rochas at this currently in its current form. Not for women, anyway. I had the Homme for a while.
Yeah, I liked it. It was like there are other Eau Friche, as the category is called, that appeal to me a lot more, like Eau de Patou and Eau de Facheux from Whale Parfums. I love those. I have several. The Lancaster one's gorgeous, but the Eau de Rochas for men, I believe, didn't that one come out in the 90s? Maybe it's something to do with that. It's like a 90s interpretation of it. It just kind of lies flat for me. Mm-hmm. How do you guys organize your collection? By house, by scent profile, by bottle aesthetics, etc.? Well, I have some by well, I do have this shelf right here. There are some that are organized by house for convenience because I know where they're going to be because they're by house. But a lot of it, honestly, I'd say like a good 80% of my collection is hodgepodge. It's like I have like this internal logic that seems like madness where I kind of know where something is, but it's not in any particular order. But there are some. Like there's like rows of Santa Maria Novella and Diptyque and Comme des Garçons and Penhaligon's. But the rest of it is just completely arbitrary. What about you guys?
I kind of reorganize my collection every few months. So I just kind of like have it. I often do it a little seasonally. So I put my like summer fragrances away during the winter time, then pull out.
I do that too, actually. I store the summer fragrances away and then I rotate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right now they're more organized by house than they've ever been in my cabinet. And that's just it. I was trying it out. I kind of like that, but then, I don't know. It's fine. I don't have a specific system.
Yeah, I don't either. I just put them up. Like, that's it. Donde quedan, ahí los puse. Wherever they fit, that's where I put them. And, I don't really have much of because chances are they're not, there's a few that I keep, don't ever leave me, but then other ones I wind up giving away. I want to say hi to AM. What's going on?
Good to have you here, AM. Thanks for the question there. And just catching up here. I just put my favorite frags on top shelf down there. I'm confused. I just put my favorite frags on top shelf down. Duncan, what do you mean by top shelf down? What? The dreaded filling of the void. Indeed. It's true.
Darren Allen, mind you, so I got to tell you something. So there are 3 discovery sets. that I love, have won my heart, and I have used them for giveaways whenever I would hit uh, um, milestone. Mask Milano's the opera. I think it's the Opera House collection, and now I think they're at 16. That is one that I fell in love with, that Discovery set. Hey, Dan, the other
Dan,
one.
oh, sorry, Marcial. Just a sec. Thank you very much, Dan. Dan does give a reminder. The thumbs up does help us, folks. So just click it. It's easy. It's just a little smash. They call it smash, right? The kids say smash it. Smash the like button. Thank you very much, Dan. Go ahead, Marcial. Sorry about that.
Roaches. But yeah, and so then the other one is the recent one is Studio Sense. They have 5 fragrances. But for me, the number one Discovery set that when I say I love it, Darren Allen Perfumes Discovery set. And the reason why is because he gives you something different, period. He's got the gourmands. He's got the conceptual after the rain. He has the Chypre #1, which is very vintage, traditional. He has so his Discovery set for me is the best one. And out of it, guaranteed, there's going to be at least 5 that you're going to say, I need to have a full bottle.
I failed to say to tell Darren, and I apologize. I did get the sample set, and I'm carving out some time to try out some of the ones that I didn't have from before, and I'm really excited to try the Fougère, and I will report back soon.
Oh my goodness, I love it. I love it. I love his house. What did Dan say about Eau de Rochas? I think he may have it.
No, he's a big fan of Eau de Rochas Homme. Yeah. Okay. We were asking about the original one that was initially marketed to, well, it wasn't really necessarily marketed. Well, I guess it was marketed to ladies. A lot of those are just unisex. I don't really think that they push, gendered marketing on the citrus aromatic eau fraiche kind of fragrances, but they would usually be at the woman's counter.
Especially vintage women's fragrances. What I'm discovering is a lot of the vintage women's fragrances are very masculine leaning in today's idea of Western perfumery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt about it at all. That the perceptions of what is considered culturally masculine and feminine fragrance, it shifts. And it's shifted greatly in the past 25, 30 years, especially. So a lot of those fragrances that were originally marketed to women, I mean, people wouldn't think twice. I mean, first of all, most people would be like, "Oh, you smell like an old person," rather than whether or not it's an old lady or an old man. They just smell a little old. Yeah. I think this is a good time, guys, because we're in our last half hour. Let's start talking about our 3 fragrances. That was the assignment for you guys. Ryan, we'll start off with you. How do you want to do this? Do you want to kind of like each person chat about their fragrance and then do kind of like a rotation, or each person goes through their 3 and then we go on to the next person? What would you prefer?
Let's do it. Do the 3 and then go on to the next person.
All right, let's do that. Ryan?
Okay, so do the full 3? Okay.
Yes.
So one of these is a bottle I had in my collection. I swapped it out. I have it back, and I've fallen in love with it all over again. I posted about it recently, and that is Hermès Equipage Geranium, which is, for me, just the best kind of old world meets modern scent. I have a decant of vintage Equipage right now that I find, is very impressive in its own right. But what I prefer Equipage Geranium because of the somewhat uncanny ability that Jean-Claude Ellena has to take heavy materials and make them light. And this fragrance stays around for quite a while. It has presence. It has body in the way that we might ordinarily say, but it never feels heavy. It's just sort of floats around you, and it's so beautiful. It's kind of a soapy leather in the best way with this. It just makes me smile when I put it on. I feel at peace with myself. It's one of those fragrances that Jean-Claude Ellena's work has this intriguing ability to reveal new facets of itself the more you spend time with his work. A lot of his work isn't like showstopper off the bat. It's not like, immediate razzle dazzle. It's a lot of his work can have a level of sophistication that you kind of have to have spent a little bit of time with it to appreciate. And I love how this fragrance just continues to reward the time that I invest in it. Really, really lovely stuff. I can't say a bad thing about this fragrance. I think it is the best version of itself.
There's a timelessness to it. I honestly would say, if I were a more rational human being, would just call like the majority of my collection, that would be one that I would definitely hold on to. I love it.
Every time I wear it, it just, I don't know. Just smelling it at the nozzle makes me want to put it on right now. Why didn't I wear that today instead of what I'm wearing? I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking about it in my head and thinking that it would be a nice palate cleanser from actually all three of the fragrances that I sampled earlier, because I don't think I really like any of them at this point. So while you continue there, I'm going to briefly just spray some Equipage Geranium. Hold on a second. I'm stepping away. I'll be right back.
There you go. Cleansing the palate. Cleansing the palate.
And then I will keep going while JJ is getting his Equipage Geranium. One I have been wearing is, I own a number of fragrances from this house, and that's just because honestly, this house is one of these houses where it's actually a great bargain from discounters. And that is, he's got it, and it's actually such a soothing scent, JJ. Like, it's a great evening, like relax, wind down after the day kind of fragrance. It's we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Oh, okay. Yeah. No worries. But so I own a lot of things from Carner Barcelona, and that's in one ways because Carner Barcelona, as far as like niche houses go, is pretty well positioned to be a good value discounter buy. Discounters have a pretty good supply of Carner Barcelona fragrances, which is good because I think this house sits at like a pretty good price point where it's before you're getting into the egregious stuff, but like is higher quality than a lot of the, mid-tier stuff. And so I got recently Ambar del Sur. Now, Ambar del Sur, if you have an amber fragrance, you don't necessarily need Ambar del Sur, but I've been enjoying it because it's a rare sort of like beachy amber. It's like a kind of amber fragrance that would go well with like suntan lotion almost. Like it's kind of aromatic, it's light, it's not a particularly syrupy gourmand amber. It's the kind of amber fragrance that you might be able to wear all year round, and it's kind of sunny. If you have any of the reference ambers and you love that, like the Histoire de Parfum Ambre or the Ambre Sultan or anything like that, you don't need to rush out and buy this. This isn't a work of perfumery on the level of that, but it is just very wearable. So as far as like a utilitarian, I just want to smell good and feel happy kind of amber scent, this does it for me. It's kind of like
I love the bottle and the cap, and even the name Ambar del Sur. It automatically does give you this idea of southern amber, beachy amber that has gone to the south of France or to Spain to soak in the sun in summer. You know what I mean? Like that's the name itself gives that impression.
Yes, and it lives up to the brief, I'm happy to say. So it's kind of like, it's just a feel-good Mediterranean amber scent. And so if that sounds appealing to you, by all means check it out. But like I said, a lot of good amber fragrances in the world. Not necessarily in the top tier, but very wearable, very pleasant. And then finally, good old vintage Obsession for Men by Calvin Klein. And this is the aftershave concentration, which you can get pretty attainably on eBay, and it is still nuclear. So, famously nuclear scent in vintage eau de toilette concentration. I recommend, for the sake of those around you, you do what I did and pick up the aftershave, because A, it's going to be cheaper, and B, it still projects like you wouldn't believe. But this is it's so good, actually. I've smelled the current, and I hate to say shadow of its former self.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an example of that. Yeah.
This is a case of shadow of its former self. This is just like as rich and opulent as like Musc Ravageur is, really. It's like if it wasn't so ubiquitous, we would praise this to high heaven, because it is just such a gorgeous, musky, amber, vanilla experience. And it really deserved to be the hit that it was. And
absolutely.
And still right now is just sensational. Like I feel bad for those of you out there who had somebody who like oversprayed it all the time and can't stand it anymore, because it really is a stunning composition. And I'm
thrilled. In high school, I that was one of my go-tos in high school. Obsession for Men.
I mean, it's one of the cases of those like hit fragrances that was like really, really good.
It deserved it, right? It was legitimate.
Yeah, legitimately great. And I get a kick out of it. It's just so warm and comforting, and that the musky base is really great. I like the opening and the mid is fine. I really love when it gets down to the base and you're getting that kind of like musky
vanilla.
The musk is really coming out. That's and not the laundry musk, but like it's actually got some heft to it. It's a good experience. So those are my 3 that I've been enjoying recently.
Marvelous. And I have an important announcement to make. I didn't get any coffee tonight, and I didn't get any coffee last week. Can somebody buy me a coffee, or 2 or 3, or maybe one person can buy me, each person can buy me a coffee. If you spare $5 and we have 29 people, then I'll have enough coffee where I won't bug you for the next several weeks. So one coffee is $5. That's about the same amount of money that you're going to spend at Starbucks. So why not? Do me a favor. Help me out. Buy me
Get him some coffee.
And that was a public service announcement from Effluvium. And next we're going to move on to Marcial and his selection.
Hey. Hi, everybody. What is going on? You're going to find out what are my 3 favorite fragrances. Well, yeah, so where do I get? I selected these from when I started, 2019. I started buying fragrances and fell in love with some. The first one I'm going to present, and I wanted to say, thank you, Ryan, for that idea of the aftershave. I would have never thought of that. It's a splash, so I can pour it into one of the decants and spray it. So I'm going to go right into my number 1. This one is my number 1 for life, period, point blank. I don't care. It's from the house of 4160 Tuesday, London. Sarah McCartney is the perfumer. And let me tell you, she is a fantastic perfumer. She creates diverse fragrances, artisanal, conceptual, just beautiful, gourmands, every kind. This one is called The Waft from the Loft. There is a YouTube channel named The Waft from the Loft. So she did it in collaboration with them. And the idea was to recreate. So their set is actually in a loft in a church. And all the fragrances that they've sprayed throughout their years of reviewing fragrances have created this scent bubble. And so they wanted to recreate that scent bubble and have the added floral smell that comes in from the window. They have a garden, and they captured that perfectly. This is a Floramber fragrance. In Fragrantica, they call it a woody, amber woody. But for me, it's a Floramber, and it's absolutely gorgeous. This is the perfume concentration. Each time I smell it, I am honestly taken back to the beginning of me buying fragrances to smell and learn, because that's always been the goal, right? Learn together, grow together. And I can tell you something, every time I wear this, every time I smell it, it is 2019 over again, and I am just delving into the world of fragrances. So this is the Waft from the Loft, 4160 Tuesday, London. Check them out. So I bought that from the House of Perfumology. And I didn't know that Perfumology had their, or has their own fragrances. They have their fragrance line, and there are now 5 fragrances. And they also have their Accords line, and there are, I believe, 5 Accords. But this one is called Clutch. And let me tell you something. If you want a fragrance that is going to make your mouth water, that is going to make your nose happy, that you will want to wear every day, that is essentially wearable to the opera, wearable to a Michelin star restaurant, and wearable to a McDonald's or a Central Park walk. Clutch is it. This was my introduction to the note of Elemi. I had never smelled Elemi, didn't know what Elemi was. And the smokiness that is produced here is gorgeous, because it's not asphyxiating. It is just such a I use the word yamative, coming from the Spanish word llamativo, right? It's very yamative, it's alluring, it calls you, it hails you, and you're like, oh, it smells so wonderful. It also has ginger. So the way that ginger works in here, gorgeous. Now, my favorite scent profile is vanillic, woodic, patchouli. And so this does also have the woods and the vanilla. So it's beyond gorgeous. Clutch, for me, this is my 3rd bottle, okay? This is my 3rd bottle. And the last bottle that I'll present is this one. Every time I give it away, I forget to tell the people that they don't have to pull. You just spray. You spray. So the actualizer is right there already. This is from Nina Ricci, Luna by Nina Ricci. This was my first conscious gourmand fragrance. It has the note of immortel, and I didn't know that what was immortel. I fell in love with it. In this case, it gives you that sugar, that really, edible type of a fragrance that people who don't care for gourmands actually may like, will recognize it. And if they had to pick a gourmand, this might be it. It's not too perfumey. It is more on the gourmand edible, but it once it dries down, it does become a beautiful gourmand fragrance. So those are the 3. This is Luna by Nina Ricci. Those are my 3 that I, from 2019, had first found, and every time I smell them, I'm taken back to that novice. I don't know anything, and I want to learn, and I want to, you know what I mean?
Wonderful choices. I like that bottle, the last one in particular.
Yes, Luna, and it's a cheapie. It's not expensive. It's not expensive, and it's an easy gift. The other one from Nina Ricci, called Nina, also makes a wonderful gift.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing those 3 that are rocking your world at the moment. I want to let you all know what is rocking my world right now. And I'm a little late to this one, but I finally picked up a bottle of Dune, Christian Dior Eau de Toilette. Now, I love a conceptual fragrance like this. So this was released in 1991, I believe, and it was a collaboration between Jean-Louis Suzak, I can't pronounce her name, but I think it's like Nejla Barber and Dominique Ropion. And this is supposed to evoke like sun-kissed sun. Like, it is like a seaside amber. There's something kind of sandy and somewhat salty about it, but there's this beautiful floral heart, a lily, a rosiness that comes from like peonies, like that kind of fresh. It's just a beautiful heart to it. It's a bit aldehydic. There's rosewood. And it really does give me this impression of like the surf, like this. It's not really marine. It just reminds me of like more so like the beach itself than the water, like a sandiness, a sunniness. Hence the name Dune, and it's just quite beautiful in its eau de toilette form. And I'm glad that I opened myself up to trying it out. I tried it out first as a little mini, and I loved it so much that I got an older bottle with the It has Christian Dior printed on it, so it's not a newer bottle, because I was a little afraid that it was affected, because many of the other Diors have been affected in recent years. So, and it didn't cost too much, and that was one of them. Another one is a relatively unknown scent from the 70s, and it's from the house of Germain Bontil, which was a perfume house that's no longer in existence. It was known for things like Royal Secret, and Bakir is another one that is a highly coveted scent. But this one seems to be really under the radar. It's a Germain Cologne Spray. So this was released in 1971. And this is in that green sheeper style, citrusy with galbanum, rosy, floral, mossy. If you enjoy things like Calandre from Paco Rabanne or Rive Gauche, Yves Saint Laurent, this is in the same wheelhouse, but it is much more rosy than the other two. The florals are not competing as much with the greenness, and there is this lightness to it. I mean, of course, it's a 70s fragrance. It's definitely denser than any kind of light fragrance from today, but there is just this elevated lightness to it that I think is quite beautiful. And I picked this up at an antique market, at like one of those like antique malls, and it was $15. I don't know how much it goes online, but I'm loving this one. And then the third one is Maria Candida Gentile. And she is an Italian perfumer, independent perfumer. And this is Barry Lyndon, which is named for the Stanley Kubrick movie from 1975, about the 18th century Irish rogue who wanted to climb up the social ladder and gain some, this aristocratic position. It's a great movie. It's actually based on The Luck of Barry Lyndon, I think, by Thackeray. I think it's The Luck of Barry Lyndon. And this is a beautiful, this is, to me, when I smell this, it's like smelling different types of ground covering plants if they smelled leathery, if that makes sense. So it isn't like leathery itself, even though leather is, supposed to be a note in it. To me, it's like you're smelling this flora, like these sort of like these plants. I mean, going back to the whole dune theme, like plants that are growing in like sand dunes, and they're giving off a certain odor under the sunlight, and it smells kind of like this aromatic leatheriness to them. It just smells very ethereal. It's not like a loud scent, but it just hovers on your skin for a long time. There's an artemisia in it, and there's almost something that reminds me of wintergreen without like the mentholic aspect of it. Like there's something like, if like wintergreen, the flavor or the scent, there's something that reminds me of that. It could be the artemisia. And then it dries down with this very sheer vetiver. Just gorgeous stuff. It's really like to me, this is like an experiential fragrance. This is not one to get attention and get compliments. This is one for, if people come closer to you, they'll experience it. Barry Lyndon from Maria Candida Gentile. That's my third one.
Sounds fascinating. Not for nothing. As you were describing is Barry Gentile, it's called?
The perfumer is Maria Candida Gentile.
Maria. Okay. As you were describing it, what my head kept thinking was, you know how there's greenery that grows in the beach, you know.
Yes.
So instead of having it be greenery, what I was picturing was leather leaves.
Yeah. Well, there are leaves
Yeah.
that feel leathery too.
Yeah.
Some of those waxy, leathery kind of leaves. Those evergreen trees that aren't even conifers. They just have these thick, waxy, leathery leaves. Kind of reminds me of like holly. Those kind of leaves.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful scent. I don't think Pep is tuned in right now, but I have to give him credit for turning me on to it. It's one that he really likes a great deal. So
I've always
yeah.
wanted to sample it. Barry Lyndon is one of my favorite movies. So
One of my favorite movies too. I love Barry Lyndon.
So yeah, that would I need to get around to sampling that one of these days.
Yeah. I really appreciate Maria Candida Gentili's approach to perfume. There is this real dedication to the detail. It's very compact. It's very precise, but there's a beauty in it. Like she's very exact with the way that she uses the materials, and when you smell it, it's just evident, and it's just hard to explain unless you experience her fragrances, and they're not for everyone. Some people will be underwhelmed because they're like, where's all the noise and the fanfare and the loudness and the beauty that's just going to get everybody complimenting me on how fabulous I smell. Well, it's just not what it's about. That's kind of like incident. That would be incidental, and it really should be in any case. But for her, fragrances, when I call it an experiential fragrance, it's like you've reached that kind of level in fragrance appreciation where, you just want to be present with your sensory experience. You're not caring about how long it's going to last or what kind of sillage it has or anything like that. You're just sitting and you're present with the fragrance, and it's telling some sort of story. And you can embellish the story with your own kind of imagination, but it is sort of a story that you're experiencing. And that's what I feel about her fragrances. Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't we go backstage while the going is good? We got 29 people on. That's pretty fair for 9:27 p.m.
Everyone.
Thank you, Marcial, for joining.
It was a pleasure to meet you, Ryan. And thank you so much, JJ. I love you. I love you from the heart, JJ. You know that from day one.
I feel the same. I'm glad to know you, my friend. I really appreciate you.
Likewise.
So next week we'll have Scented Moments, and also Dave Callie's Groom Room, one of our semi-regular panelists, will be joining us, and I'm assuming Ryan will, unless you have any other plans, Ryan. Here we are again. Like, are you going to be able to make it next week?
I should be able to. I provided work doesn't get too crazy next week, I should be able to do it just fine.
All right. And you always give me due advance notice. So the week after that is Gabe Oppenheim.
Oh, the Ghost Perfumer. I love Gabe. Have you seen his posts? If you're not subscribed to his Instagram, you must. And if you haven't read his book, The Ghost Perfumer, you must purchase it and read it. And his posts are like, so if you read the book, for me, I love the book. And I was like, I need more. His posts are kind of like doses of what the new book could be. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally. Great. He's really a great storyteller too. Yeah. Fascinating. He just has that knack. March 21st for The Scent of It and Anjali Perfumes. March 28th, Shelter and Perfume. And April 4th, Lanier Smith will be joining us for a 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live stream with Chris from Scentland will be returning for that week as well. And stay tuned. I am working to have Sebastian Furtado. He has his own great YouTube channel. And even maybe some talks with Wasp from the Loft, perhaps.
Oh, that'll be cool too. This is the Le Bonbon d'Emilie by Shelter and Perfume. This is a delicious, gorgeous gourmand. It's a praline based. And guess who gave it the name?
Who, pray tell?
Moi.
There you go.
Le
Wow.
bonbon d'Emily, and it is absolutely delicious.
Anuj just popped in just at the very tail end here. We love to see you, Anuj. The current trend mindset, which I agree with, for collectors is culling their collections to have more quality over quantity. And I think that is a healthy direction to go in for sure. And one that I hope that I have the courage to do myself, because I'm already getting tired of all this crap. There's a few fragrances sitting around where I was like, do I really want to hold on to these? So, yep, so that's what we have lined up coming up. And yeah, this has been really a great time. Oh, also, I did get a message from Jane, and she was very disappointed she couldn't make it, but we're going to hopefully get her scheduled for sometime in the near future. So stay tuned for that. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And ending broadcast is